pretty good depth. The challenge here, that's a bit shallow. The challenge here will be to get these sods to go back over the trench and not leave it open like that. Probably the other challenge is here, like where the beans are left on the top. That there seems to be some sort of coulter issue. So that's 1, 2, 3, number 4. Coulter number 4 on the right. Morning everybody, it's Wednesday and we're out trying to drill into the grass sward. We have applied 20 tons of compost per hectare on this, and in fact, how accurate my estimations were, but we still got quite a pile of compost here. But it has been loaded and mixed, so we can use it again in the future. It's not like it's going to go anywhere. So Jack is just turning around. We just started, and it's bits like this where the mole ploughs pulled it up. That's going to be a real challenge. It's dry on top, very dry on top, but there's plenty of moisture underneath, so we'll see how it goes. I just sent Jack back. We found one of the pipes had come off, so that's been sorted out. So we just stopped there and done a little bit of work. We've dropped the tyre pressure. We got it down to a bar. I suppose we could go lower, but we're also moving compost at the moment. So I'm trying to keep the, don't want to have too much time spent blowing them up again. But yeah, Jack was saying that even though he can set it to go at up to the metering will go up to 16k, the tractor, even though that is 150 horsepower, well, it won't go any faster than 6k. So we're really struggling in these conditions. Not often that you see dust coming off a Claydon drill, but there you go. Interestingly, it's the seed is going into moisture, so we will be back this afternoon to roll this. Kind of imperative really, but interesting to see just how hard ground conditions are. We also stopped and checked the lead tine, and the lead tine is out as high as possible, so it's only matching the A share, so we really can't do any more as far as pulling it out the ground. It just is that hard. So we will roll this tonight, try and conserve moisture, and we will see how these beans fare in these unusual conditions. One advantage is, of course, that now that ground conditions are warming up, these beans will really leap out the ground. So that's something in their favour. But difficult. I'm quite comfortable if this. I just want to bring this field back into production. Therefore, I'm willing to compromise on establishment. Morning everybody, it's Saturday, Easter Saturday morning, and we're out for a walk in the tricky field with the moth damage. So I just wanted to give you a quick update. So as you can see, the strong crop has advanced a little bit. So it's got to the bottom of the valley now, and it's beginning to come up a little bit. However, unfortunately, when you check it out, even in the stronger bits of the crop, or let's say not stronger, but let's say where it's beginning to grow. So here, I was roughly thinking that tree sort of marks potentially viable crop. But even in the greener sections here, you're getting a lot of grass weeds and broadleaf weeds here. And I was particularly worried about stuff like this strong black grass. Now, you have got wheat next door, but I think to be realistic, this guy is going to overpower the wheat next door. I actually came here because I wanted to make an assessment of whether we put fertilizer on. But actually I'm increasingly finding myself thinking about here's another good case. You've got a wheat plant there, a wheat plant there, then you've got black grass, you've got some cleavers there. I mean, it's not a viable crop. Nice big black grass. You see, he's got nothing around him. The seed return from that's going to be massive. So that kind of brings me back to, really, is it worth damaging this crop, or am I better taking a hit, spraying it off, by our standards it's not very late, so we could come back to this with a spring wheat and replant it. But there are two issues with that. One, not a lot of moisture. Secondly, this is an outlying piece of land, so it's a bit of a challenge. I really want to come here once, and then we've got two strong bits of wheat either end. How are we going to time it? I don't really want to come here twice. So do I put in something like a mustard or some sort of cover crop to cover me? What instead? I'm just looking now. You can see as we get towards this end, this is the far end of the field, it does markedly thicken up suddenly. So really, if I was going to draw a line, it would probably could go as far as this, by these telegraph poles here, because it is pretty thick. Maybe go a little bit before. This end's not so good, but down here, by this oak, that big tree starts to thicken up a bit. Maybe I should be more aggressive and just say definitely these telegraph poles. But there you go. Definitely a challenge, and more importantly, I don't quite know how to resolve it going forward. At the far end, as you can see, this is a pretty good crop. So this has only had digestate, hasn't had any bad nitrogen yet. Skylarks are chirping away. It's a pretty good crop. And as you see, as we turn around, there's the barren area in the middle. If only the whole thing looked like this. Morning everybody, Saturday the 19th of April, and we're in a field of beans. So I actually filmed the planting of this field, so I'll include a little bit of footage of that. And we'd spun on some oats that we cultivated in the wet, and then the beans were planted into the germinating oats. Now, as it happens, most of the oats died when the beans were established, and in fact I just wanted to touch on this crop. So there is a fair amount of black grass in this field, and that's one of the reasons we're growing the beans in it, is to give it a bit of a break from its fairly continuous spring wheat status. And as you can see, there are also some broadleafs coming through. Now, we've actually decided not to spray this with basogram. We talked about it last week, but see the flowers beginning to develop, and you can't use basogram once flowering starts. So the beans rush through their growth phases really quite quickly. Last year we experimented with going really early with beans. These were planted nearly a month later, so I'm quite pleased with the crop as far as it's really coming along. I would still prefer to be planting those beans earlier, but this is, considering how wet this field was, I'm pretty happy. Now, I just wanted to touch on how we're changing our management of these beans. So pretty much beans historically have been treated as like a second crop, as like a break between wheat. With our historical yields of winter beans, we are beginning to treat this as a primary crop that helps us achieve one winter wheat before we go back to our spring wheat cycle. I wish I could grow beans closer than 1 in 6, but I'm not willing to take on the bean disease. And in fact, that is an interesting discussion, because this week we were looking at a contract to grow a lucerne for forage, and one of our issues was aspergillus in relation to passing it between the lucerne and the beans. So that's something that we're looking into. But picking up on the lectures by John Kempf at Groundswell, talked about different micronutrients creating different levels of resistance. I'll put the pyramid on the screen. Now, in the case of these beans, instead of us sort of letting them just grow and maybe controlling the weeds, but not looking after the beans themselves too much, other than a sort of a chocolate spot fungicide, we're actually treating these quite heavily with micronutrients. So my thinking for this is, and I haven't done a sap analysis, this is pure conjecture, but if my wheat suffers from magnesium and manganese deficiency, why would the beans be any different? So I'm applying magnesium and manganese to these as if they were in a wheat program. Now, the interesting side effect from that has been, as predicted by John Kempf, the magnesium has caused the beans to green up, and I have been particularly impressed by how green they look all the way through the year. They've stayed really green, which I'm really impressed with. And I'm hoping that we can also benefit from an extra side effect. In the case of our micronutrients, we put on Nutrasol, and both the magnesium product and the manganese product both have a sulfur element, either manganese sulfate or magnesium sulfate. And of course, sulfur is a major element for the protection against fungal attack. That also came up in John Kemp's presentation. So I'm hoping that by putting the regular applications of manganese and magnesium sulfate on, then I'm also getting a bit more disease resistance to protect against the chocolate spot that will come later in the season. It's interesting that in the winter wheat, when we were doing a sap analysis, that we got better efficacy magnesium and magnesium sulfate on than we did with a blended sulfur product as far as fertilizer application. So now we avoid putting a blended product on, we just stick with urea, and we allow for the sulfur to go in a foliar form. Morning everybody, Sunday the 20th of April, happy Easter. So we're out Easter Sunday, just having a quick farm walk. So this was the first field of spring wheat we planted, and I just thought we'd take a look at it. So as you can see, the lines are pretty well up now. It's quite well established, sort of 2 going on 3 leaves. However, I just wanted, so this was the field where Jack was weeding, and I showed you a couple of weeks ago, I showed you footage. It's pulled out the stones. We've had pretty much a frost every morning, so I haven't been confident enough to roll this yet, but I did want to show you a feature of the claydon here that needs to be considered. So hopefully you can see this. Dark row, light row, darker row, or let's go this way. Dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. And the lighter rows are a bit thinner. So if we go down here, that's a dark row, thin row, dark row, and it goes to various extents. So this row's very thin, so's this one. Now, to explain the claydon setup, you've got that leading tine, and you adjust the depth of the leading tine with the depth wheel, and you set that first, and then you set the depth of your second rows with the top link. So the drill pitches front to back, so pretty much the front is always the same height, but the back the longer the top link, the lower. So obviously one of the set of tines, either the front one or the back one, was either deeper or shallower, and when it could just be the raking that disturbed germination, or it could be that they just say deeper and they're coming up from deeper. Interestingly, as time goes by, it has been improving a lot to look a lot more stripy earlier in the week. So I'm going to bet that these are coming from depth. These rows are that they have been deeper, and the darker lines look darker because they've germinated for longer. So what we have here is an example where drilling depth is affecting germination, rather than a case that the weeder has disturbed it. But I just wanted to say that weeding before emergence, or at the point of emergence, is incredibly scary. Jack was terrified by it. I wasn't exactly unconcerned. But in this field, it appears that we've got really good weed control. And what we're just trying to do is let the wheat get established and emerged before the weeds come through. So just knock the weeds for a couple of weeks and give the wheat a head start, which seems to have worked very well. So when we were out here weeding this, so we weeded all the spring wheat block, we also ran a trial on a particularly naughty field of winter wheat. So let's just pop over there and have a look at that. Okay, so we are in the boundary between field on the left there that was weeded and this one on the right that wasn't. Okay, so the only reason we weeded the winter wheat, we were sure the efficacy was going to be largely minimal, but we've done a trial in this field before. It's got a high black grass pressure, so we just ran a check strip just to see. However, that was not the learning experience. This is looking in the non-weeded section. Hopefully you can see it is quite yellow, and it was definitely suffering from drought stress. It's improved dramatically. So we received 9 millimeters of rain on Wednesday. So as you can see, that one was relatively yellow. Has picked up the nitrogen since the application and rain this week, which was really lucky. It was exactly what we were hoping for, but there wasn't much rain the first day, Tuesday. We were getting worried, so very pleased with the outcome in the end. Right, so very much same soil type, all that sort of stuff. Now let's have a look at this field. Okay, so completely different, much darker colour, much further along in development, drilled on the same date. Really pleased with this. As far as black grass goes, it's still here, but I think it has taken a bit of a hit. It's difficult to see if there's any damage or anything. It's definitely behind the wheat, but I'm just absolutely taken aback by this. It's just fantastic. probably worth saying that we have some experience of this. It shouldn't be a surprise, because we reckon our rough rule of thumb is that a weeding produces about 60 kilos of available N for the crop. It's quite significant and way more than you would anticipate, especially on this land. This has got a very low SNS or soil nitrogen score. It's when we test it, I've got some test results from this spring, but I'm thinking it's only sort of 50 kilos of N theoretically in the score. So this crop is really getting hold of, there's a nice black grass here, hang on. So look, I mean, any gap, so here there's obviously some sort of wheel mark or some scrubbing, and it opens up and straight away you get these huge black grass. I mean, that's going to be a huge head. So we always aim for competition. Pheasant. This sort of level of competition, we've pushed our seed rates up, but you see with the claydon you're still getting these wide spaces, so if you get any sort of error, the black grass is in. And that's one of the reasons when it comes to the spring crops that we don't plant with tram lines, just to catch, maximise coverage. It's also why we push the seed rates up. Returning to this field then, it's liberated what I would say 50 to 60 kilos of N in the formula. Can't quite understand where it comes from. Put up the soil N test, but it didn't have a lot of N available. So whether this is some sort of microbial action that is generating this, but going forward we will be weeding all of our winter wheats in the spring purely to generate N. I mean, this has kicked this crop onto another level. Dogs are enjoying pheasant hunting. They found another one. So it really is quite a game changer for our regenerative system. If the biology is creating N through whatever mechanism, but the weeder seems to be the mechanism by which the N is released. Quite how, obviously it could be mineralisation, but I wasn't anticipating A, it to work so quickly, or B, that it would work in such dry conditions. That's kind of thrown me off a sort of straight mineralisation. So I think it's got to be more of a biological process in the fact that you move the soil, some air gets in there, and the bacteria use the air to respire and breed, and N's released in some mechanism. So, I mean, we're not going deep. We're not talking about cultivations. I mean, this bit here, there's another opening. There's a tram line there, so this would be near the edge. But look, you can see the crumb. I mean, really, probably 10 mil. That's all. That's probably the depth of the weeder. I wouldn't have thought it was going any more further than that. Lots of this guy. We get this problem on light land. We've actually got a herbicide application planned for this field before we go in with a T1. This is had a T0. So please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe and click on the bell to get notifications of when our next video goes live. Just a quick question for the comments. Could you just, I've started trying to stretch the length of the content. Could you just comment on whether you like this longer sort of 10 to 20 minute content rather than the old sort of 3 to 5 minute content. All right, thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye.